Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Cradle of Filth, Existence is Futile, out October 22nd on Nuclear Blast. The album has 14 tracks, 2 of them are bonus tracks, 17 minutes in length, and this is the band's 13th full-length studio album. They are an English extreme metal band. Now, at first glance, this album feels very daunting. 14 songs, 17 minutes, there's a lot there for the listener to process and digest. But they created the perfect structure for this album. Starting off with the intro, really allowing you to understand what this record is going to be all about musically and even from an atmospheric perspective, setting the bar, setting the tempo, setting the tone for the rest of the record, leading you in and allowing you to feel comfortable in your environment. And then there's 2 interludes that play 2 very important and distinct roles within the construction of this record. At first glance, they feel like they are the perfect segue for the songs that come after. They add to the atmosphere of those tracks, they add to the musical experience of those tracks, and they really complete those songs. But they also work as far as pauses or breaking the record into different acts. So every interlude is a break, every interlude is a pause. Before it, there was one act, after it, there's another act. This is also really important because as a listener going through this record, you really feel like you need to catch your breath at certain key points in order for the overall experience to be smooth, to be continuous, and to be pleasurable. You don't want to feel like you have to work through the record. You want the record to do all the work and you're just coming along for the ride. Those interludes play a magnificent role as far as creating that movement and really allowing the album to have a lot more fluidity. Once you get into the soundscape, this is perhaps their most elaborate, powerful, dramatic album to date. Super cinematic from start all the way to the finish, with real defined parameters in terms of what each element has to do within this record. I felt like this was an album that pulls you sometimes into different directions depending on the song, depending on the style, depending on the lyrical content, on the theme in which the song is taking you. But at the same time, all the ingredients were exactly the same. They're just coming with different amounts from different directions with different purposes. So there's definitely a red line throughout this record connecting all of these songs, but at the same time allowing them to have some diversity, some soul, and pull you in different directions, making the album more dynamic, giving it more ebbs and flows and not feeling flat all the way through, and perhaps even a little bit linear all the way through. You want the album to have life, you want the album to have energy, musically, spiritually, and even in terms of the atmosphere that it creates, and definitely in the lyrical content. And this album has that across all the different parameters. You really feel like you're in a little bit of a roller coaster ride of emotions as you progress through this record. With every single song, you feeling something different. You have peaks, you have valleys, you have moments of somberness, you have more introspective moments, you have more of outbursts. So all of that is really well represented on all the different layers that make up the soundscape of this record. A record, like I said, that lives off of that cinematic, artistic vibe that really becomes the cornerstone, the direction in which the soundscape is taking you. You're going to see that in the orchestrations. The orchestrations on this record are phenomenal, perhaps one of the best from this band, because I really felt that they added value to the songs. They were not there just to create atmosphere or to make the songs feel more cinematic. They actually created shapes. They allowed the songs to become visual. They allowed the story itself to come to life in front of you as you're listening to it. So you can imagine exactly what is happening within the song just by what the orchestrations are giving to the record, just by what the orchestrations are giving to these tracks. Phenomenal work from beginning all the way to the end. Super consistent in the quality, not necessarily consistent in the execution, or at least in terms of where they come in within songs themselves. Sometimes they have more of a predominant role, becoming really the fog that covers, that blankets the track, sometimes more as a layer coming in and out and creating a different type of ambiance and not getting in the way of the heaviness, for example, of the drums and guitars. And the drums on this record really have a lot of power, they have a lot of depth, but I love the fact that they feel very warm, they feel very connected, they don't feel flat at all. They always feel like the heartbeat, and sometimes heartbeat and soul of every single song, taking you in different directions, giving you different perspectives, bringing you in, pulling you back out. Really incredible drum work all around, and the same could be said for the guitars. The guitars on this record are outstanding. They have so much life in them, so much energy to give, so much direction to pull you in. I really felt like they were almost like the strings and you're just the puppet, and they're pulling you up and down in your movement, and how you move throughout these songs. It's really dictated on where the guitars are going, but the guitar work all around It's filled, it has it's lively, and that is something that you could be said about the whole record as far as the sound is concerned. Lively. I felt like they captured the essence of Cradle of Filth live, but now in a studio setting and fine-tuned. When you go see this band live, the energy, that organic energy that you get from the band in a live show is really well captured during this studio record. I don't know exactly how they were able to pull it in, but they were able to bring that energy into the record and allow these songs to be big, to have power, to have strength, to feel cinematic, to feel dramatic at times. It's a record that paints pictures with every single track. The orchestrations really work towards that effort, but everything else together, the drums, guitars, and obviously Danny's vocals really allow this record to have shapes, to have forms, and for you to see those shapes and see those forms within each and every single song. Danny is phenomenal on this record, absolutely vintage. He opens the book of everything that he can do vocally and he brings it into the table. There's no area that he doesn't want to go to that he can go and just dominate. This record is just outstanding. From the beginning all the way to the end, he's able to capture emotions within his tone, within his delivery, the way he weaves his voice in some of the chorus. The choruses were so hooky throughout this record without necessarily being lame. They just had a sense of bringing you in, making you feel comfortable, telling you something that you wanted to hear or perhaps something that you didn't want to hear. But the way it was being told to you, it was in a very accommodating way. And that was Danny with his voice really pulling the strings, really moving well throughout these songs, elevating the quality of the tracks and working as a perfect narrator. The way he tells stories is incredible. It helps the whole record. It helps the sound. The sound helps him. The two really work as one, and this album is as nearly as perfect as you can get. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue that this is the band's best album to date, because everybody always says that their latest album is the best album to date. I think you can make an argument that this is definitely in their top 5 albums, even perhaps 3 best albums ever, because the work, the craftsmanship, the way everything is organized, the orchestrations, I have to go back to that because I felt that they were one of the standout elements of this record. I think you can make that argument for one of their best albums, but even if you don't want to make that argument, the argument that you should be making is that this is one, without a shadow of a doubt, best albums of the year. It has to be in that top echelon. It's a record that just doesn't fall flat in any of its categories. It delivers song in and song out. Now, as far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Existential Terror. One of my favorite songs on this record, and it was right the second track on the album. I just love it because it has great orchestration. The choirs are phenomenal. It's a song that feels somber, it feels dark, but it's also melodic at the same time. The drums are heavy, super consistent, really allowing the track to have some sort of a foundation. The guitars are brilliant, they drive the experience, they're heavy as well, so you get a little bit of everything as far as guitars are concerned. Danny's voice guides you. He's the storyteller, and in this song he really comes across as a magnificent storyteller. Once he gets to the chorus, there we go. That catchiness, that hookiness, the way he tells that story, the way he brings those lyrics to life in that chorus is just, it just really brings you in and you don't want to leave this track. This track just has something special, and that chorus is really that honey that brings the bees in, if you will. It's just magnificent chorus, really well crafted, really well executed, both musically and vocally. A song that also has a very nice bridge. The bass comes into that bridge and allows it to give you a little bit of a taste of what is happening behind the scenes, because a track that has a lot of layers, sometimes it's hard for you to define them. So that bridge, I felt like it was really important because it scaled back. It took a little bit of those layers away and allowed you to see things that perhaps were a little bit hidden before. And then after that bridge, the track starts to build back up again, starts to morph and grow, going back to how it was when it started, and it goes full circle. Just a substantial song with a lot of things happening for it. A song that kind of defines what this whole album is going to be about, which is a record of layers, a record of sound, a record of experience, a record of atmosphere and orchestrations, incredible vocals from Danny, and hooky and catchy choruses. This song has it all, and so does the rest of the record. Next, you have The Dying of the Embers. This has a very nice intro, the very theatrical intro, and the female vocals at that intro really add to that cinematic, that theatrical vibe. it opens up your imagination the moment that this song gets started. The guitars and drums drive the experience in parallel with one another, or in unison with one another, if you will. There's a changing of intensity, a changing in speeds. The orchestration fills in the gaps, but the guitars and drums are always the ones pushing forward. Changing, like I said, speeds and intensity, but always pushing forward. The orchestrations on this track felt a little bit more in the background, filling in those gaps, like I said. It enhances the atmosphere, enhances the experience, but they don't get in the way of what is happening musically. Danny's vocals come across almost more like a narrator on this track, but he's a great narrator. He really captivates you with the way he tells the story, with the way he brings these lyrics into the forefront. The changes between the more melodic, heavy, and dark and raw sides is really what gives the ebbs and flows to this track, because this is a song that doesn't have one size fits all. Like I said earlier, the guitars and drums change speeds and change intensities, and when they do that, they go from more melodic to heavier to darker to more raw, almost a live feel show as far as some portions of this song are concerned. And this really becomes the heartbeat of the track. You're constantly moving up and down in terms of how you perceive this song. A very dynamic track from beginning all the way to the end. Last but not least, How Many Tears to Nurture a Rose. Killer drums on this song. Absolutely killer. So heavy, so powerful that at times I felt like they overpowered everything else. There's sometimes where the guitars take that role, they take that lead of overpowering everything else. So perhaps there's a passing of the baton between drums and guitars, but those two elements were just so strong, and the drums specifically really jump into the forefront, and this is a track that allows them to shine and have a little bit more of its moment in the sun. It becomes a very intense song. It becomes a song that pushes itself forward. It has heaviness, it has force. Like I said before, the guitars and drums together, they push the track, but the drums always feel like they're in a little bit more of a lead, but they alternate. The orchestrations are a little bit more behind. They're perhaps in the back seat as far as the overall construction of this song is concerned. And that is fine. Sometimes you need songs that are a little bit more raw, a little bit more direct, and that's exactly how this track comes across. You depend more on the drums and guitars, and the orchestrations are more of a flavor. They're more of a layer, a very thin cloak that kind of weaves itself through the overall musical soundscape that this song has to offer. The vocals sit on top of it, and they just direct traffic. That's kind of how this song comes across. Danny is not as concentrated on following or leading, he's more concentrating on directing. At least that's how his voice kind of interacts with everything else that's happening within the song itself. This is it. Cradle of Filth, Existence is Futile, out October 22nd on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.